Hi, it's Sean D'Souza from Psychotactics.com, and we're going to learn today about uniqueness. How do you pick one? Because that's the whole concept of uniqueness, picking one concept. So let's start off with this journey. Now, if you had a flash drive and you needed to buy a flash drive, how much would you pay for a 1 gigabyte flash drive? Most people would say, well, I'd probably pay $5 or $20 or $15, but $79? Would you pay $79 for a flash drive? Because when you go out in the market and you look at all the flash drives out there, they cost about $19. And yet there is one flash drive out there called IronKey, and it's worth $79. So you have to ask the question, why? Because that's the question. Why do you have to pay $79 for something when I can get it for $19? And that is the question that you have to answer for your clients. All the time your customers are asking you, why should I buy your product? Why should I not buy something from a competition? And that is where your uniqueness comes into play. So the goal of uniqueness is very simple. The goal of uniqueness is to create a why. Now, we have run into uniqueness several times. We look around us and we see all these brands, and we know these brands really well. For instance, Subway with 6 grams of fat. We know Domino's, it's been played to death, 30 minutes or it's free. We know about Timberland, the shoes. I've been wearing these shoes since 1990. Why? Because they're waterproof. They're 100% waterproof. We know about FedEx. We know how it gets there overnight, absolutely, positively. And of course, Volvo. What case study will we have with our Volvo about safety? And we've been told about this stuff. But the problem with all of these brands is that they're overused examples. So people keep telling us, oh, you should do stuff like Domino's. Oh, you should do stuff like Volvo. But what about me? What about me as a small company? How do I stand out as a copywriter, as a web designer, as a carpenter, whatever I'm doing? How do I stand out? How do I get people to say why and then pick me? So that's our goal for today, how to get to why. And how do we get to why? Well, we're going to figure out how to get to why if you own a small yoga class, which is a service, or if you have a product, for instance, like a book, or if you have, maybe you write copy, or you have copywriting workshops, or you have some events. How do you get to uniqueness when it's a small business and you need to control it and you need to get your word out there? You need to get the word out there. So that's what we're going to cover today, getting to uniqueness. How do we create this uniqueness? Where do we find it? What do we do with it? And a little housekeeping before we start. The duration of the presentation is between 30 to 40 minutes. So what you need to do is just get some light refreshments, get yourself a little coffee or something to eat, sit down, get a piece of paper and a pen handy, because you want to listen to this and write down the ideas as soon as they come to you, and then go over this presentation twice or thrice, because you'll miss out a lot the first time around. The second time it'll be better. The third time will be even better. That paper and pen is going to be handy. It's got to be handy because it's going to be useful for you. So the agenda for today is very simple. We're going to start off with the search for uniqueness. This is what we do all the time. We try to find uniqueness. We search endlessly, never find it. But what we're going to do is we're going to follow a simple system today. And that simple system is going to enable you to get to uniqueness every single time. And of course, we're going to find out some common mistakes that people make consistently and why uniqueness seems to elude them all the time, whereas it doesn't with other companies. So that's really our agenda for today. Let's start off with the first one, which is the search for uniqueness. Now, under the search for uniqueness, we have 3 main topics, and we're going to look at how you go about finding uniqueness. Then we're going to look at one of those methods, which is playing emperor. So those 3 methods that we're going to use are features, feedback, and playing emperor. And then we'll find out why playing emperor is very effective. And of course, how brands, all these brands that you've heard of, how do they play emperor? How do they get to that point? What are they really doing different from what you and I are doing? So let's start off with the first thing, which is the features, feedback, and playing emperor. What are features? What is feedback and what is playing emperor? Let's say you have a yoga class. Now this is a service, and obviously you're going to have some features of this yoga class. You're going to have some feedback from your clients, how they would like your yoga class to be, and you play emperor. Playing emperor is where you decide what the yoga class is going to look like. So when we start to sit down and brainstorm, and we go, okay, let's write down the features, something that already exists. So say your yoga class already exists, or you've been to some yoga class and you go, what are the features of that yoga class? Well, for one, I'd like clean yoga mats, I'd like expert teacher, clean bathrooms for sure. And so you come up with this list of 4 or 5 or 16 or 25, whatever. You come up with this list of features. And this is the way to go about uniqueness. You can either create features, or you can go to your clients and ask them for feedback and say, what would you like to see in the yoga class? And then they would say, oh, we'd like parking, or we'd like supermodels, because, we're intimidated by supermodels showing up there. And then they come up with a list, and you have this list of 4 or 5 or 15 or 20. So what we're doing now is we're starting to create a list. We're not trying to create uniqueness. We started out with features, we went to feedback, and then we go to the third part, which is playing emperor. Now, playing emperor is simply where you decide. You say, I'm the emperor. This is what I decide. This is what I'd like my yoga class to be. So you could decide small group. You could have organic apple juice for all I care. You could have these things that you would like to do as the emperor of this yoga class, as the creator of this yoga class. So what we have are these 3 things, which features, feedback, and playing emperor. So this is how we go about creating lists. So we're not really creating uniqueness, we are creating lists. And we've got a list for features, we've got a list for feedback, and we've got a list for playing emperor. And what the recommendation is that you instead of going with features and feedback, what you should do is play emperor. So what is playing emperor? Let's find out. Playing emperor simply means that you are like an emperor. You stand at the edge of your kingdom and you say, if I were emperor, this is what I'd like my kingdom to have. And so you create this decree, and the reason why this decree is effective is because it frees you up. You decide what you want to do. You want to have the yoga class that follows moon phases, and suddenly you start to see, wow, this is different from every other yoga class out there. You want to have an Indian restaurant that has no butter chicken or no chicken tikka. Now you're creating a completely different business out there because you're playing emperor. So do they do that? Do brands actually play emperor? Well, we have to look around us. Domino's Pizza, 30 minutes or less, 30 minutes or it's free. What do they do? Well, all the pizzas were out there, and suddenly there's this one pizza which says 30 minutes or it's free. So what options did they have? They had options of, well, we could play emperor by having chocolate sauce on our pizza, or we could have 30-minute delivery, or we could have sexy delivery guys or sexy delivery women. We could import cheese from New Zealand and put it on the pizza. We could have a thin crust, super thin crust, thick crust. So they've had, or they would have had, all of these options, but they picked one, and they picked 30-minute delivery. And then they built their entire DNA about delivery, not about taste, not about ham, not about bacon, not about cheese, not about delivery, not about chocolate sauce, but about 30-minute delivery. So they played emperor. When you look at Timberland, again, Timberland, 100% waterproof, they have warmest shoes, 20% harder soles, blah, 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 color choice, whatever. Again, they have all of these features, they have all of these things that clients would have said, but they decided to choose 100% waterproof. And then they built the entire story around 100% waterproof. So they're playing emperor. Same thing with FedEx. They had lots of choices. You could have, they could say, oh, wait a second, we can just do precious items, or we could be the cheapest courier, or we could do big, huge packages, or we could get there overnight, or we could transport cheap. And what they chose was overnight, because obviously cheap wasn't an option. And that is again playing emperor. And this is really what we should be doing, because when we look at another really well-known example, which is Volvo, we start to see that they could say fastest and cheapest and safest and family sized and mileage. And very interestingly, Volvo is one of the most used cars. I mean, it has an average age of 19.8 years per user. That's average. It's second only to Mercedes. And so it could have gone with mileage. It could have gone with a whole bunch of things. A Volvo has been driven for 2.8 million miles. So they could have said, oh, we have mileage and we have this and we have that, but they chose safest. And so they created a whole system, a whole DNA around the fact that it's the safest car. Now, when we get back to that yoga class that we were building, you'll start to see that we have all of these options. We have small group, organic, carrot juice, which is what we created as the emperor. And we chose injury-free. So what is injury-free? Because now once you've said injury-free, what is injury-free? We'll find out shortly. Let's look at another service, like say you've got a copywriting service. Again, you have all of these options, but you decide, I'm going to go for speed. And what does speed mean? A 10-day turnaround. So you could choose, you could make a big list from your clients. You could do whatever you wanted, and you'll have this list of 15 or 20 things, and then you would have to pick one. And when you pick one, that's when the dynamism of the uniqueness comes about. And of course, picking one from playing emperor is more powerful because it allows you to be free. It allows you to just go out there. Now, when you look at something like Subway, you think, well, they had 6 grams of fat, and that was good because they created it. Sometimes uniqueness is thrust upon you. So this is Fogel. He's the spokesperson for Subway, or has been for many years. And you've probably seen how he lost this fat. Well, his roommate or dorm mate really came up with this concept because he saw Fogel had lost a lot of weight. He didn't recognize him. And so he wrote an article in the Indiana Daily Student about this whole phenomenon about Fogel eating Subway and losing weight. And that was picked up by Men's Health. And then Subway decided, oh, no, that's not going to work. But they decided to run it anyway. And so the sales went up. USA Today picked it up. ABC Network picked it up. Fox picked it up. And of course, Subway decided to drop it in 2005, and their sales dropped by 10%. So the point is that Subway has tried to get away from this as far as possible, but this has been their uniqueness which has been thrust upon them. And sometimes uniqueness is thrust upon you. So when we start to look at all these brands, what are we really looking at? We're looking at 2 simple steps. One is you play emperor, you come up with your list, and then you pick one. So when you look at all of these brands, say Domino's Pizza, you know why. Timberland, you know why. Yoga Class, you know why. Volvo, you know why. Copywriting service, you know why. So to summarize the first part, we looked at features. Features are things that already exist in your company or exist in some other company. We looked at feedback, which comes from your clients. That's very powerful. Put it down. And finally, playing emperor. This is the most important of all. Playing emperor is very effective because it frees you. It just gives you that ability to create something that you really want. And finally, we've seen that successful brands, they play emperor. They create something, and then they create the entire DNA around it. So this takes us to our second part, which is steps to uniqueness.